Alright, so it's the second week of the Hero Arena, and today I thought I would give you 5 teams that can easily beat each of the enemies. Now there are of course many more teams than just the 5 teams, but for the sake of the length of the video, we'll just go over 5 teams. We're gonna sort of go over the tactic of them, the gear you need for them, and a couple of like variations in case you don't have 1 or 2 of the units. But before we get into it, do make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you're new for some more Grand Cross content. But with that, yeah, let's just get into it. Alright, so the teams I'm about to show you are of course gonna assume that we are gonna do it on Master difficulty, so 300k CC. If you have higher CC, if you have like really built out teams, of course you can just extrapolate what I'm saying. For the Champion or perhaps even Challenger difficulties, do know that the enemies in those difficulties have greater HP pool, so of course you will need to deal more damage. Some of the gear sets that I'm gonna talk about, of course I'm just using attack crit gear, but that is just for my account of course. HP defense gear will probably work on most teams, except for maybe 1 or 2 of the teams that are like pretty much just one-shot teams. But we'll just get into it. We'll like have a look at sort of what teams the enemies have. Now the teams I'm about to show you are of course gonna work worse or better against certain enemies. For example, one of the teams is gonna work better against the third team here, against K, just because you're facing off against the Archangel's team last, and they are a little bit weak against the Archangels because they rely on like decreasing the enemy's stats, which of course you can't do for the first team of the Zero and Luna fights. So do keep that in mind, but we'll go over it in just a bit. Also, if you're interested in some other teams that I'm not gonna mention today that I think might even be the best teams, do check out my other Hero Arena video, and there should also be a playlist on my channel, so yeah. But for now, we'll just go over some of the teams that I think are strong against the Hero Arena, and the first team that we're gonna talk about is gonna be the Filo weak point team. Now this team of course has several variations, but the one I'm gonna show you that utilizes Filo, Kyo, Red Brunhild as well as Sigurd is gonna be basically your one-shot team. This team, at least on Master difficulty for me, one-shots the enemies with the exception of the Archangel team. Now this is the team I was talking about earlier where you need to go up against the K opponent, because that sort of team formation that he's using will have like the Archangel team as the final team, because this team of course relies on Brunhild's stat decrease as well as like the attack and defense snatching of Sigurd. Now basically how this team works is of course you're just gonna snatch with Sigurd turn 1, and then you'll either attack with Filo or Brunhild's AoE weak point cards in whatever order you want. You can go with Brunhild first, you can go with Filo first. One of the enemies of course in this lineup of teams is gonna be the one Escanor, so if you go with Filo first, then you will at least chip off one of Escanor's final flames with the Brunhild attack, because I believe Filo will quite easily be able to one-shot Escanor, as well as like all the other units on the opposing team. Now when you go up against the Ragnarok team, you will of course have to use both attacks because of Ragnarok Diane, who prevents the enemy team from taking more than 50% of their max HP in one attack. But that's sort of why this team is sort of nice, because you do have 2 weak point cards that can deal a lot of damage. Now you're just using Kyo of course for the debuffs that you can apply, as well as like Brunhild of course also for the debuffs, and the snatch from Sigurd is also gonna be the 5th and final debuff for Filo, so that Filo can deal the maximum amount of damage. Now variations of this team are of course like you can just run the regular Filo team that's utilizing Filo, Infinity Merlin, Echidna, as well as like a random 4th unit, maybe Ram to boost your unknown allies basic stats by 20%, maybe some other units that boost your stat in one way or another. For the team you see on the screen right now, of course I'm just using Sigurd for that purpose, just to boost our attack by 30%. Let's say you don't have this entire team, maybe you can run some other unit instead of Kyo that applies some debuffs to the enemies, such as Green Mono. That should work. It's gonna reduce the enemy's crit resistance and crit defense, which will make it so that at least your Brunhild will be able to crit a lot easier. Filo of course will pretty much always be guaranteed to crit. Then you can put like Green Sariel on Sigurd, have him apply like 1 additional debuff or whatever is gonna be required, so that Filo of course gets to attack against enemies who have 5 total debuffs. Same thing with like if you're running the Merlin team, you will of course have to like debuff with Merlin as well as Echidna. Now the nice thing about having Echidna there is of course her debuff is an infect, so if you can have like any other unit that has like an infect, that would be really helpful for this team. But to me this team works really well against the K enemy, because it kind of struggles a little bit against the Archangel. You can't quite kill them in one hit. Of course you can't kill Mael in one hit. Sometimes if you don't get a lot of crits with like Brunhild and stuff like that, you might end up with like 3 of the enemy's units still alive. And Mael of course, because he's gonna use his AoE attack, will heal back so much with that attack, and if he uses some other attacks with the other units, they will heal back. Maybe then you don't even draw any more weak point cards. That's sort of why I like to keep this team as like the final team that I'm using on the final fight, because you get to go through 4 teams that you are able to like stat lower and kill quite easily, and then you're facing off against the Angels, and like yeah, you can struggle a little bit. Even if you fail with this team, so you die, then you still have like 1 chance chance you can use one additional team, and you should be able to clear it. But yeah, that's the Filo team. Like, of course, there's variations of the team. Just try to combine any sort of units that have like a passive that applies debuffs to the enemies, or you can, like, if you have Infinity Merlin, you can use her as well, because anytime you attack the enemies, you will apply a debuff with Merlin. And then if you attack with a debuff card and have a green Sariel on that unit, with just that one attack, you will apply 3 entire debuffs. That's pretty damn crazy. Try to pick out unit that's gonna lower like the enemy's defense or crit defense or something like that, so that you will be able to hit them more harder. But anyway, that's the team, and we'll move on to the next team now. Alright, so the next team I want to show you is gonna be the Attack Seal team. Now the gear you want on them is of course gonna be basically the same you want on all the other teams. HP defense, with, if at all possible, like the middle pieces you want to have be crit resistance, so that you don't take that much damage, because you do need to have all your units be as topped up as they possibly can be. Now the core of this team is of course going to be Summer Merlin for her attack sealing passive, Red Gopher for his attack seal card, as well as Meliodas to prevent the enemies from ult rushing. If they don't have like any buff cards or debuff cards, they need to use a card, and if they do use a debuff card, Nanashi here of course will prevent the enemies from being able to ult rush and give you a little bit of defense. Now Meliodas is going to be your star here. He's going to be like your damage dealing unit. Maybe if you can spare the CC loss you get from like using attack crit instead of HP defense gear, then of course go for melee with attack crit gear, because he is going to be the one who's gonna like deal the most damage, of course. And every like turn, try to either attack seal the enemies with Merlin or Gopher. I would suggest going for like Merlin's attack seal turn 1, and then in case you get like another Gopher attack seal card or a rank up card, like you can do a 2-turn attack seal, and that should be really helpful there. Then by that point, like maybe you use some melee cards, you got Melee's through magic, you will be able to deal a lot of damage with your cards there as well. Try to get Melee's ultimate as quickly as you can. Like if you have him duped out -5/6 and is able to like one-shot the Archangel team, most definitely get his ultimate. But do know that in most of these fights, if you're like starting off against the Archangel team, Red Tarmiel will prevent you from being able to ult rush. Well, you can ult rush, but you just have to wait like 1 or 2 turns before you can actually use your ult, unless of course you have a cleanser. Melee is able to cleanse if he gets attacked enough. Other than that, there's not much to say. Like you can of course get unlucky and have the enemies attack you once or twice or whatever before you can like resume getting the attack seals. Always try to prevent them from rushing their ults and always attack seal them, and slowly but surely you will be chipping away at the enemies. Now this team is only sort of weak against one of the enemies, and it is from the first enemy you're facing, the Zero, if that is the one you pick first. So I would suggest going against Luna or Kay with this team, because Zero has the green small wing king fairy team, and pretty much all units except for King have only buff or debuff cards, with King having like 1 attack card and 1 debuff card. You can't pretty much attack seal them. Like that's just not gonna happen. So going off against him might be a little bit tricky with this team. Like you will still take a lot of damage, you will get shock debuff, poison debuff, like it's just not gonna be a good time. So try to go against some of the other opponents with this team specifically. Also do note that every single team has like this Filo, Echidna, Merlin team. They do have quite a lot of debuffs in that team, so you kind of want to kill off at least Echidna or Merlin as quickly as you possibly can. Preferably Merlin, though Echidna with her infect card can be quite annoying as well, because you won't be able to lifesteal back. But that's of course gonna depend on who you go against and at what level. So like exactly how hard the enemies are gonna hit you for, or how easily they will die, will of course depend on what difficulty you're going in. But this team is pretty solid. I don't think like there's any unit you can replace with someone else except for maybe Nanashi, but then you sort of still need one way to prevent the enemies from rushing their ults. If say you don't get the Merlin Pumpkin Bomb, or you can't get like Gopher's ultimate, or you're facing off against enemies that can still get their ultimates if they sort of keep attacking with the same unit or buffing or whatever they do, and Melee's passive also doesn't work. That's why you want Nanashi there, because he can also delete cards, so that's kind of nice as well. Say you're up against the Archangel team with Tarmiel and Mael, you do know that either Tarmiel or Mael will have a buff or debuff card, so then you can just remove their cards with Nanashi. But yeah, I think that's gonna be it for the second team. Alright, so next up we got the Roxy Ghislaine. Sort of unknown team, and of course you have plenty of variations on this team. I used Nanashi and Ram in the testing of this as like the supplemental units. I did find that the enemies most of the time were like targeting my Ram, so maybe like you can go with a unit that has a heal, such as Shuna, heck, maybe even Beatrice. Like any sort of unknown unit that is able to heal you would be pretty much ideal here. Of course with Shuna you'll get some damage reduction reduction as well as like the heal and the pierce rate increase whenever she uses the heal card. That can come in handy as well. But of course, like you can use any sort of unknown units. It's basically the unknown team. Whatever unknown units you have, you should probably do fine with. If you have Infinity Merlin, slap her on there. If you have any units with Infect, that's gonna be amazing because you're gonna prevent the enemies from being able to heal back. But pretty much any unit will of course do well here. I did struggle a little bit against the Archangel teams with this particular team, and it isn't the fastest team either, but it's pretty safe. I didn't take too much damage except for, of course, Ram and Nanashi did take quite a bit of damage. But of course that can be mitigated. Maybe you have like a unit that can taunt up or something. Though an unknown unit that can taunt up, that's basically just blue Reamer, right? I think then in that case anyone who can heal, because of course the bubble is gonna be there every single turn from Roxy. That's gonna help you out as well. And if they happen to not break the bubble for whatever reason, then you have the attack seal Merlin there on the team. Then you will get your 20% attack related stat increase, and then you can just go to town and kill any one of the enemy's units by just attacking into them with whatever unit has the attack related stat increase. Also try to build up Ghislaine's passive by attacking with her Signature cards in the beginning. That could be very helpful there. If you can sort of chip down one of the units, you should be kind of fine there as well, because if they sort of try to heal back with that unit, they will of course attack into the bubble most of the time anyway, so they probably won't get a lot of lifesteal back, except for if it's the Archangel team, because they synergize so well together. And if you saw my other Hero Arena guide video, then you know the Archangel team is one of the teams I ran. But other than that, like this team works out quite well. The strongest enemy will always have to attack Ghislaine. You just slap Tarmil Grace on Ghislaine, she can do well there. Just rush her ult. She has a really strong ult that works on everyone. Have like some other units like you can try to rush ults with or whatever. You shouldn't have a difficult time, honestly. And like if you're struggling a little bit, try to get a unit that has like some healing. Of course, gear on them. I just went with HP defense on all of them. And of course, again, if you have like crit resistance sub rolls on the middle pieces, I would go for that. But do know that like you're losing out on a little bit of CC by having that, but you're gaining some survivability, which is much welcome. So yeah, try to mix and match. This is basically the unknown team. Whatever unknown units you have built out, like try them out, see how it works. If it doesn't really work out, try to go for like some other unknown units and see how that's gonna work out as well. But with that, let's move on to the next team. Now team number 4 is gonna be the mono blue Naofumi team. Now I first tried this team out with blue Gil Thunder for the increase to defense. Raftalia hit like a truck in that case. Like if she could one-shot any one unit with either 1 or 2 of her attacks, because she deals about 200 to like 280k damage if you have red Sariel Grace on her. I did go with, of course, full triple defense gear on them, on both like Raftalia and Naofumi. And my Nanashi was HP defense, and my Goddess Liz was also HP defense, as well as like Gil Thunder. But I felt like Gil Thunder took way too much damage. The enemies, of course, kept targeting him because he has lower stats overall, and he doesn't really deal that much damage to be able to heal back on those stats. He is of course a backline unit, but because you have all 4 of your units in the front in this game mode, having Goddess Liz there, being able to like apply a shield that's gonna protect you. A lot of the times the enemies aren't even like breaking your shield. She of course has a stun, so she can stun whatever unit is trying to like ult or whatever. You of course have Nanashi in this team. Like if that is the team you wanna like slap Nanashi on, do know that you can only have Nanashi on one of your teams, but he sort of works in a lot of teams. And there are of course like other alternatives to Nanashi, but if you're intending on running the Naofumi defense team, of course Nanashi with his defense buffs and stuff like that is gonna be really great here. Though of course you can go with Gil Thunder instead and just try to prevent the enemies from ult rushing with Naofumi's attack. I tend to save Naofumi's attack until like he's built up a bunch of his passive stacks that he gets like whenever you get attacked. I think Gil Thunder would work there, but it is of course a little bit safer with Nanashi, because of course if they attack you, they will lose their Arcade Orbs, and if Nanashi gets like a silver Signature card, he can like remove the enemy's ults as well. Liz though, she's really good because if you get her ult off, if you have her 6/6, she's basically gonna prevent the enemies from even being able to damage you, and they will just die when they attack her. That's what they do. They just die. If they use an AoE, they're pretty much goners. And if you've been able to kill like 2 or 3 of the enemy's units, then you can just stall out a little bit, try to get her ult again, get her ult off, and then finish off the enemy, because her ult also heals, so you can move on to the next fight fully topped up and like ready to go. This team worked out very well. Of course, again, Raftalia, if you have Gil Thunder instead of Liz, will be able to one-shot any one of the enemy's units. She might still be able to one-shot if you have Liz there. Just taunt up with Naofumi, use like the 2 Raftalia attacks turn 1 and see how it goes. The only one she wasn't able to like one-shot with this team was basically Red Tarmil, I think, because of his healing, but otherwise you shouldn't have a problem like one-shotting anyone unless they have like super high stats for whatever reason turn 1. But yeah, that's the team. Really good team. I would recommend recommend you at least trying it out if you have these units. But yeah, with that, we'll move on to the final team. So the final team I have for you today is gonna be the OG Fezban mono red team with Reinhard and no Tweegod. I didn't want to have Tweegod here, instead I wanted Liz for her healing. Now again, like the only team that this team is gonna struggle against is gonna be any sort of team or any sort of fight where you're facing off against Echidna or any other unit that can infect you, because like the thing it does, like infect is gonna of course prevent you from healing. That's gonna prevent like the Ban blue buff from healing you. That's gonna prevent Liz's passive from healing you. So what you want to do is you just want to try to attack her. Like you might not even have to buff up, just attack with Ban and Reinhard and maybe like do enough damage to kill Echidna turn 1 if you have a really built out Ban there. Now the gear of course on them is gonna be some variation of like the HP defense gear on all of them. Arthur, like you want to slap the regular HP defense gear on him with like the attack defense HP sub rolls. Same with Liz. Reinhard and Ban though, on the top pieces you don't want attack because they're completely based off of HP. They get their damage done by HP instead of attack. So on the top pieces, like the sub rolls you want there would be something like a mixture of crit chance and crit damage. That is what I would suggest there. Now this team works out great, like of course if you're not facing off against any team with like an infect such as the Echidna, Filo, Merlin team, and that's because of like the great amount of healing you're getting from both Ban, from Liz, and of course you can slap Tarmil Race on like literally anyone. I had it on Liz. I didn't want to have it on Arthur because Arthur's Holy Relic, if his HP drops down to like 20%, will fully heal anyway, and Liz is like the most squishy unit, so if Arthur doesn't have a taunt up, she is pretty much gonna be the one the enemy is going after because her HP is just a little bit lower than everyone else's. But of course she increases her HP related stats, which again increases her attack a little bit. Twigger is another great alternative there, but it doesn't like increase her HP related stats. I believe it only increases HP, so that means Ban's healing will heal for a little bit less as well. I mean, it might still be good. You will be able to deal more damage there if you want to go with Tweegod instead. But Liz, if you have her Holy Relic, that is what I would go for. And just to clarify, it's like the red SR Liz or whatever she is, like the regular one. She also has like a healing card that is able to like ult rush you, so that is good there as well if you want to like get your Reinhard or Ban ults and just kill them. The Ban ult, of course, if you have him 6/6, is gonna do rupture damage. So if you can get his ult against the Archangel team with Red Tarmil alive, and if they buff up with Red Tarmil, which they usually do if they have a Red Tarmil buff skill, you will pretty much be able to one-shot them with Ban. Otherwise, if you have like a built-out Reinhard, and you can ult with him, you don't even need him to be 6/6, but if you can get like his onset increase as well as his damage dealt increased buffs in this same turn, and then like use 1 or 2 attacks, you will be able to kill like 1 or 2 of the enemy's units, even if like the ult doesn't kill. So the team is really good. Arthur, you have him there just to taunt up and like prevent the enemies from ult rushing, because that can become a problem. If they get an ult off, like it's over. All the enemies basically have like 6/6 ults. It's pretty much over at that point. But yeah, I mean, this team works out great. You have some extra healing there with Liz if you need it. You can pretty much ensure that your units are gonna be topped up at the end of every single turn. So by the time you move on to the next enemy team, you will be like fully topped up and ready to go. But anyway, I think that is gonna be it for the 5 teams I have for you this week for the Hero Arena. Do let me know if you sort of want to see some more teams. And also if you have some team suggestions of like teams that work out great for you, do let me know down in the comments below. But with that, I think that's gonna be it for me. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a most wonderful rest of your day. And yeah, I guess I catch you in the next one. Bye.